Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a beautiful Wednesday morning here in the Enchanted Forest, and appropriately, barking right at the intro to today's show, Our Sacred Relationship with Animals. That's Gabriel James. There it is. Hey, Linda. Good morning. Hey, Angie, you can relate too, right? Our sacred relationship with animals. It is a gorgeous morning here in the Enchanted Forest, and thank you for joining us today as we talk about animals and the four-legged kind, sometimes the three-legged kind. Once in a while, there are the two-legged kind. Of course, usually those come with feathers. But we're going to talk about angels in fur and angels in feathers and angels in scales and creepy crawlies and all those good sorts of angelic conversations. I happen to believe that our pets are sometimes angels in fur and feathers. And I really don't think of them as pets myself. Gabriel and Dominic and Heaven and Lectus and Bo, they're really more like family members to me. And to me, that represents sacred. Good morning, Patty. It's good to have you here. Hey, Holly, good to have you here too. So, as we begin this conversation about animals and our sacred relationship with them, I'm curious, those of you in the chat room that are in for the conversation this morning, what to you determines whether or not a relationship is sacred or if it's just mundane? What is it about that relationship that flips it from one casual thing to something that's really sacred to you? Let's talk about that. I'd like to begin by talking about the fact that personally, it's been my experience anyway, that animals do have a soul. And I know there's a belief out there, I think it's diminishing with time, that animals don't have a soul. They're soulless creatures that are just meandering about this earth plane. And when they're done because being soulless and all, that's the end of their existence. And I don't subscribe to that. In my experience of being a seer, a sensitive, I've known all along that animals, whether they are our pets or whether they are the wild variety or they're living in a zoo, they do have a soul. And they do continue on once their spirit, their soul leaves the inhabited body. They do go on. I've seen them in spirit since I was a very young girl. I continue to see them in spirit. When they pass on, where do they go? Well, they go where the spirits of creatures go. Sometimes they're the first to wait for us or to greet us when it's our turn to go home. How many times I've heard someone from the other side tell me, you know what? The first face that I saw that was really familiar was my dog. It was my cat. It was my parakeet. It was my fish. It was my horse. That was the first face that I saw. That's who welcomed me from the family when I got to the other side. I love that. Years ago, I had a gentleman come to me for a session. This was a very long time ago. And he came to me and I could tell that he was a little uptight about sitting across from me. And maybe, this was one of those occasions where I was going to have to prove myself, prove that I could do what it is that I do inherently. And he sat across from me with his arms across his chest and his legs crossed, which always tells me, okay, They're either angry to be here, they're afraid to be here, they're scared of me. Clearly, they're not open to being here or open to conversation. So it's going to be one of those. And I remember that feeling of, oh, but okay, the work is sacred, so let's continue on. And I asked him, what is the purpose for you coming to see me today? And he just looked at me and he said, I'm just here to see what happens. Oh boy, another sigh from me. Oh gosh. So I asked my guides, my spiritual guidance, to allow the loving presence or the presence of loving beings to make themselves known, loved ones, etc. And no people came through from the other side that morning. There were no people. And I remember very explicitly that there were two, I called them, they looked like white mops that came running in. Looked like two little white mops. They were dogs, and I could tell that, but they were the moppy kind of looking dog. And I looked at this man and I said, well, I hate to disappoint you because I can only tell you what I can tell you, and keeping things honest and real, there aren't any people here for you, but there are these two little critters that look like a couple of white mops running across the floor. And this man looked at me, his jaw dropped open, his eyes got really big, and then they welled up with tears, and then he sat in the chair and sobbed. And I just held sacred space for him to be with his grief and his longing. And he looked at me once he gathered himself together and he said, what you just described, those two little beings, they are who I came to see you for. They're the reason I'm here. They were his little twin puppies. I believe that they were Lhasa Apsos. And he gave me their names and he said, that's exactly why I came to see you. I had a bet with the parish priest. I said, you came to see me over a bet with your parish priest? And he said, I did. It's over a bottle of really good scotch. He told me in my grief over the passing of my two dogs that dogs don't have souls, that they're soulless creatures and they don't go to heaven. And in essence, it was just a lot of wishful thinking to think that they might be there when it's my time to pass. And my client looked at him and said, well, I've heard of this lady, blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, if you go see that lady and she tells you, she describes without any prompting, those two dogs, I owe you a really good bottle of scotch. And if she doesn't, you owe me a really good bottle of scotch. I said, well, I hope you enjoy your really good bottle of scotch. And tell your priest, shame on him for telling people that their beloved pets don't have souls. And if he ever wants to have a conversation about that, send him right on over. All I could think about were all the little kids and, all of our inner children that grieve the passing of our pets only to be told by an authority figure that they didn't have a soul anyway, and when they're done, they're done. Right? And he said, I sure will. And this gentleman and his family actually have become longtime clients of mine. Pardon me. This idea that animals don't have souls, I'm not buying it because I know it's not true. It's not that I don't believe it's not true. I know that it's not true. And it always cracks me up. It doesn't crack me. It frustrates me. I'll put it that way. When somebody says everything in the world comes from the Creator. Everything is made by the Creator. Everything is the soul of the Creator, has the spirit of the Creator. And then it comes down to something as beloved as our four-leggeds or two-leggeds and, all of our animal babies. Baloney. Pshaw, I say. Let's see. Patty is saying, feeling a close bond, almost telepathic. You can see their spirit in their eyes and mannerisms. Absolutely you can. Yeah, I agree with that. Angie is saying, any relationship that makes my heart happy is sacred to me. I like that. Holly is saying, the feel, a shared experience, a golden grace feel. I like that. Good morning, Sonia. Holly is saying, they sure do have souls and crossover. My bunny, Lily, visits and still gives messages. I love that. Hey, Tara, good morning to you too. Yeah. Sometimes people will ask me if, their beloved animal who has crossed over can become, like an angel or a guide. I believe that that is true. And again, not only do I believe it, I know that it is true. I know that. I've had many, many four-legged family members. And to me, my pets are not pets. They are part of my family. They're part of my family. And one in particular, my cat Ashley, who I received for my 18th birthday. I wanted a black cat more than anything. And for my 18th birthday, my high school friend Joyce Humphreys, she had a black cat in the barn. They owned a great big apple farm where I was going to high school, a big apple family. And they had a brand new little black kitten out in the barn. And Ashley became my 18th birthday gift. And she lived for another 18 years. And, she was a beautiful being. And of course, Merlin. Many of you know my Merlin. Tintagel's Magnificent Merlin. Those were his papered names. That was his papered name, I should say. Tintagel's Magnificent Merlin. I just called him the Merm. And that little 5-pound beastie boy, oh my God. Love that boy. Love that boy. And he still guides me. He's makes himself present. And around the house, I'll never forget a couple years back, I was doing a Humblecha Vision Quest. And I was riding in the car with Lily. We were headed toward my sister Barbara's place out there on BIA 26. So we were headed to Barb's place, and I looked up in the clouds. It was that night I was going to go into my Vision Quest. I looked up into the clouds, and the clouds were the formation of Merlin's face. And I stopped the car. And Lily looked at me and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Lily, look out the window and up at the sky and tell me what you see." That's all I said. And she did that. She looked out the window. She looked up and she said, "Oh my gosh, it's Merlin." There was that little Yorkie face with one bent ear gazing down from the sky. It was like Claudia Nielsen had painted Merlin out of clouds and sunlight in the sky. Well, of course, that brought on the tears, and I had to sit there for a moment and think about the love. And think about the love that 5 pounds of Yorkshire Terrier had for me. Spectacular. And what we do for those animals that we love, those beings that we love. Right? I've spent more on veterinarian bills and care and chemotherapy and, right? Yesterday, our Beau, he is having a bout of cancer now. And so Dr. Bunn was out. And it's astonishing what we are willing to just do that we wouldn't even sometimes do for ourselves because we love them so much. Why do we love them? Because they're unconditional, right? Well, my Heaven can get a little bit snippy and sassy at times, but she's pretty much unconditional, even if I don't have apples on a particular day for her, right? They love us no matter what we look like. They reflect back to us, how we're feeling, who we are, what we need. Yeah. And so, we will be hauling Bo over to see Dr. Bunn in order for him to have surgery. And that's okay. That's what we do because we love them and they love us. And they depend on us. They depend on us. We have this sacred relationship that says, I will love you no matter what, even when we get peeved at them, right? Yeah. Hey, Kelly Spencer. Lovely people. Yeah. Well, Kelly, you know what it's like, sacred animals and loving the critters. Yeah. Holly is saying, the painting you have of Merlin always makes me smile and laugh. Me too. Thank you for that, Holly. Claudia Nielsen is one of the most astonishing artists I've ever known. And here in my home, she has painted a beautiful portrait of my Merlin. If you've ever seen here in my office space, the entire wall is a Black Hills scene that has all of the horses, my horses, painted onto the wall. And Tana Jacks, she's a fantastic artist as well. Tana has also done portraits of Merlin and the horses. It's a sacred bond that we have with animals. And not just those that live with us or that we care for, but also those that are out in the wild. Here in the Enchanted Forest, those that are continually here, we've named. Hugin and Moonin are the two ginormous crows that live in our pine stand. And we know if something is going on out there in the Enchanted Forest when Hugin and Moonin begin to, kick up a fuss. We know something's happening. And we also have this beautiful family of groundhogs. Some people are like, get rid of those groundhogs. I say to them, are you kidding? They were here before I moved here. I called them Professor Waddles and Mrs. Waddles. That's my inner child. That's how I named them. The inner child names them. Professor Waddles and Mrs. Waddles. She has her own little den. He has his own little den. And this time of the year is when the babies crop up. And he's been nest building, right? So I watch this. They remind me of the seasons. They teach me of the seasons. We have an eagle out in the Enchanted Forest and sometimes foxes and deer, of course. They're magnificent beings from the Creator. And each of them, although they kind of sort of look alike, each of them is very unique. And each of them has a story to tell, something that they teach us humans, if you listen, if you pay attention, that they teach one another. Some of them are for medicine. What do I mean by that? Some of them are for medicine. Kelly Spencer is saying, also when Merlin came to you in the photo of you in Ireland, was it? That was amazing. Yeah. Oh, you mean Sparrowhawk, that photo of Sparrowhawk like a nest in my hair. I looked like the wizard Radagast from Lord of the Rings, out in the fairy grotto. Yeah, there's this great photo. Spirit looked at me in the fairy grotto in Ireland and said, take a selfie right now. Do it in black and white. And I did. And sure enough, they're sitting on top of my head, right at the crown chakra, all nested in. Yeah. Pretty astonishing. You're right about that, Kelly. Lectus and Bo are show horses, and Elise still rides Bo. And it's really, those two are like poetry in motion. Bo and Elise riding one another. It's like watching Sandy Herrick. One time out at the stables in the round or in the arena, Sandra Herrick and Elise were both riding horses here up the road, and I just watched. It's all I could do. I'm certainly not, no, I'm not, there's no equation to watching Sandra Herrick or Elise ride horses, because it's more than riding. It really is poetry in motion to watch them for pleasure. And Elise has shown horses and done all of that. Lectus is a retired show horse. And she paid the price for being a show horse. She's permanently scarred, literally, from being somebody's showpiece. I was talking about that with Kevin, Kelly, and actually Kelly's dad, Tom, was asking me, because Tom was grooming Dussie on Sunday, and I said, Tom, just don't go near her ribs. And he said, really? I said, yes, she was punished, beaten and brutalized into being a beautiful show horse. And he looked at me. He said, what's wrong with people? I said, well, a lot, but her ribs are permanently scarred from her breeder and the person who Halter showed her for years. She doesn't have to do that anymore. She gets to be fussed over and groomed and primped and pampered. Elise showed her Western style for a while, but that was a little difficult too, because, you know, those Western saddles and things are very heavy, and getting anywhere near her rib cage was very painful for her. Her beauty cost her a lot of money, or it was a lot of money, right, for her. But what I'm saying is her beauty cost her a lot of pain. All those ribbons and all those trophies cost her. And people have asked, so why do you keep her? You can't show her anymore. She only has one eyeball. We had to have one of her eyes removed a couple of years ago due to cancer, because I love her. And I promised her when I rescued her from the person who brutalized her that I would never leave her, that she would always be taken care of. I made that promise to her, and I will fulfill that promise. And Bo, he's a show horse too, English hunt seat, but we train very differently with him, very gently, very lovingly. I compare it to, you know, when my kids were in sports. Elise was in every sport you could imagine. And beating her into submission to be the best at her sport, or brutalizing her mentally, emotionally, and spiritually to be the best at her sport, I wouldn't think of doing that to one of my children, nor would I think of doing that to any one of my animals, my other family members. And then there's Heaven, and many of you see Heaven. She's got that great white mane with the black tuft. Well, she's just sassy, and she decided a long time ago, apparently, she was not going to be a show horse. But that was after the young lady who had her dislodged her jaw from beating her with a stick because she wouldn't perform appropriately at the 4-H, right? So her jaw was off its hinge. Which leads me to this really great thing about why animals are sometimes just meant to be medicine. So fast forward to about 3 years ago at Hidden Creek Stables. Gathering Thunder Foundation is now beginning to support Hidden Creek Stables because they are a rescue sanctuary, and Cheryl and Roland host what we call at Gathering Thunder Horse Nation Day for the urban Native American kids, the youth. And Heaven has never really let anybody around the left side of her jaw because, again, she was beaten into being a show horse by a young person, and that jaw is very touchy. During Horse Nation Day, I'll never forget this scene. It brought tears to me and to Elise. I turned around and I looked, and here's this beautiful young Native American woman snuggled and snuggled right up to Heaven's left jaw with her arm around Heaven's neck, up and around from underneath, and they're mind melding. I have a great photo. Maybe you've seen it. First time I'd ever seen Heaven allow that. And afterward, that young woman, she walked up to me and she said, I guess she's probably 10, 12 years old. She looked at me and she said, I love your horse, Miss Denise. She feels really good to me. We were communicating. And I looked at this young gal and I said, what was it like for you to have your head right up against heaven's jaw, communicating with her? And she said, my heart is full. Can I come back? And I looked at the chaperone who was with the youth and I said, you can bring them back anytime. That's the medicine. That young girl left with a full heart, and it didn't require a saddle. It didn't require a bit. It didn't require stirrups. It didn't require any of that. It was energy. It was soul to soul what I watched that day with my 3 horses, Bo, Lectus, and Heaven, and Bojangles. Cheryl brought in Bojangles, who did a great mind meld with a little 2-year-old. Oh my goodness, that little one was so cute. His long black hair was as long as he was tall, right? And I've got a great photo because the animals, the horses, the dogs, they know babies, they know youth, they know, they can feel, they can sense pain, they can sense a need. And they try their darndest to fulfill that in the way that they are able. Hey, Peggy. Hey, Kimberly. Kelly is saying that photo is breathtaking. The serenity on both of their faces is priceless. They were healing each other. They were. And I let Marlena know. I said, you are the first person. And she looked at me. A little while back, a young woman brought her 3 young ones, 4 young ones, out to the stables for some horse time. And when they got there, I explained to them, and they were just young, beautiful young children. I explained to them that most of the horses there at Hidden Creek had been abused. And they looked at me like, who would do that? So I said, so when we're around them, we need to be quiet and gentle. They're here for love, to receive love, and to learn that human beings are capable of being kind. And I'll never forget, one of the youngest ones looked at me and said, oh my goodness. I said, yes, they're here to learn that human beings are capable of being loving and kind. For some human beings, learning that they're capable of being loving and kind comes the first time that they meet an animal or they adopt an animal or, what have you. For some people, that is their experience of first learning what it means to be compassionate and kind. I love this subject matter. At the end of our days, when it's our turn to go home, because I've never had anybody from the other side say, geez, I'm so glad that I brutalized my animals. I'm so glad that I mistreated, right? My animals. I'm so glad for that. The great news is that if you have ever mistreated an animal and you bear regret for it, I'm really sad that I mistreated that animal. I'm really sad that I bore witness to that and didn't say anything. You can connect with that animal and let them know if they've passed on. I'm really sorry that I wasn't there to protect you. I'm really sorry that that happened. Just like you would with somebody that you love who's passed of the two-legged kind. I feel really bad about what happened, about the neglect, what have you. Animals, to me, are messengers from Creator. So for me, that means they're angelic in nature, angel messengers. And I believe that all animals of all sorts are messengers. They're here to teach us. I say sometimes I've seen animals that are better parents than some of the two-legged variety of parents that I know, right? Oh my goodness. And we do have spirit allies that are animals, and some of them are those that we nurtured and took care of, while they were alive. Tussie really gets the extra special treatment because even though Elise does not show her anymore, she still loves to be primped and, pampered and all those good things. Her long mane brushed and her tail brushed and all of those kinds of things. And she loves it. She looked good in the show arena when she was there. So did Bo. All shaved up and slicked back and well-trained and all that good stuff. Heaven's well-trained too. She's really well-trained in eating apples and carrots, but that's okay. She's my medicine horse. And what I mean by that is she helps me travel. What do I mean by that? She helps me travel. Sometimes when I go out to the stables and I'm with her, when I'm brushing her, we kind of meditate together. We meditate together. If I have a question about something deep and something that's ancestral, when I'm brushing Heaven, I'll ask her and I'll talk to her about it. It's amazing what we tell the critters, isn't it? Heaven, show me any insight that you may have, please, while I'm brushing her. And we kind of do a meditation mind meld about that. She shows me. On Sunday, I said to Kevin, it always feels good after, being out here with the horses. And he said, I was just going to say the same thing. There's something about being out here, the smells and the feels and yeah. Yep. Peggy is saying, I don't understand how people can be so cruel. I remember my grandfather whipping his greyhounds. Couldn't take that either. Yeah. Even with cows and things. Boy, farm animals, all of them. That does get to be part of our lifetime review, by the way, how we treat other living beings at the end of it all, right? Linda's saying, we love animals, earth angels. God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God in turn in him and her. Certainly would include animals and their souls. Yeah. I do believe that the tide has changed with regard to our perspective about animals. I believe that animals, in the house, they have a job. Dogs, in the spiritual sense of things, dogs are protectors in the physical world. Cats are our protectors in the non-physical world. So cats are very perceptive. Dogs are too, but cats are hypersensitive to spirit, to the unseen world. Cats are. Boy, I watch Dominic. Not only is he a great mouser, he's fast, but he is so sensitive to the ongoings or the goings on in the unseen realm here in the house. He is spectacular. Spectacular. He also knows where I have any ache or pain in my body because he'll come and lay on my ankles or my knee or, whatever it is. He's spectacular. Gabriel, on the other hand, his job is the protector. He is. And, I didn't have the opportunity. I didn't take the opportunity to train them. He or Merlin. Well, Merlin refused to be trained. That was horrible. He failed dog training camp. Merlin did. All 4 or 5 pounds of him. I don't know what that's probably why he was in the bargain bin, right? When we got him, the breeder said, here's the bargain bin dog. I always want the bargain bin dogs and cats and horses and stuff. Give me the bargain bin. So Merlin was in the bargain bin. His mother was a show dog. Her name was Angel, actually. And she was a show dog. He, because he had really gnarly teeth and a twisted ear, he was the bargain bin. So, of course, that's who went home with us, was the bargain bin. And he brought joy. That was his job. Was to be the joy bringer. Yeah. And Gabriel's job, other than being a fierce protector, I believe his job is, to test my skills at remaining calm. I don't know. But he was also, he was a rescue. Gabriel was a rescue. Another bargain bin that I found in a playpen. An old nasty playpen. Yeah. But he's a teacher. And now he's older, right? When our pets get older, it's amazing what they teach us about compassion and about patience. I watched him defend the life of Merlin when Gabriel was being viciously attacked. He's been viciously attacked twice by large breed dogs while I was walking him on a leash. Viciously attacked by dogs not on a leash. Supposedly well-trained dogs not on a leash. Viciously attacked Gabriel, pulling his leg literally out of socket, and hours and hours and hours of surgery to get the leg back in. And so, yeah, he's a little crabby and a little sour about some stuff. I know people get that way too, so I take that into consideration. Right? Holly is saying, horses help give us freedom in so many different areas. Right on, Holly. And Tara's saying, laugh out loud, Merlin definitely had a mind and a spirit of his own. Boy, there's an understatement, huh, Tara? Yeah. Animals have personalities. And as I always said to my kids, if we get one, it's not going back on the shelf somewhere. It's not a stuffed animal. We're not returning it to Toys R Us because they're not a toy. They are beings. And maybe I'm really hyper vigilant about that because I'm an adopted person who was given back to the toy store and then resold and rehomed, as they say. Just like a dog or a cat, I was rehomed over and over again. So I'm probably a little more vigilant and verbal about it. Because in my psyche, in my soul, I know what it's like to, that's a pretty little thing. We'll bring that home. Nope, no. And actually, as my dad, the Sarge, once said, you didn't perform the way that couple thought that you should perform. I said, what do you mean by that, Dad? He said, well, you didn't talk and you didn't do what they thought you were going to do, so they gave you back. And I suppose that's always remained in my mind and in my heart and in my soul and in my love of animals. And frankly, I'm glad that they did that because I wouldn't want somebody to keep me who really wished that they had rehomed me. It was the compassionate thing to do, to rehome me as a toddler, rather than to keep me and to continue to physically abuse me. Because I didn't perform, I was punished. just like Tussie. And so my compassion and my championing, I guess, if you will, is born out of my own exact experience of what it's like. And the lasting effects, the way it shows up. It also shows up in our beloveds. And we can put it back on the toy store shelf, and maybe that's the more compassionate thing to do. It can be, rather than beat it with a stick or with words, yelling and screaming. Or we can say, you know what? Our souls were meant to interact. Your soul and mine are very old and dear friends. What am I going to learn from your imperfection? And what are you going to learn from my imperfection? That's how I look at it anyway. And that's just me. That's just me. So at Gathering Thunder, we're getting ready to do a fundraiser for Hidden Creek Stables. Cheryl's a little worried about how she's going to pay for the hay for the 24 rescued horses and donkeys and, now goats and ducks and chickens. And she's not sure how she's going to pay for the summer hay or the autumn hay or the winter hay this year. But she's determined at 70 some years old to maybe work more hours outside of the farm. She drives bus for special needs children. She's a school bus driver for special needs children. And that's how she affords to pay the medical expenses in her own human family and also for the needs of the rescues there at the horse and donkey rescue. So if you see it out on Facebook and if you have an extra $5, we'd appreciate it if you could donate that, because $5 will buy a bale of hay for one of those rescues. Our wonderful bond with those animals that are seen and those that are unseen, just like they come to us, I believe, in the physical world for us to learn from them and them maybe to learn from us that perhaps humans can be kind and compassionate and patient. They also come to us from the non-physical world to teach us, to guide us. And when people oogle in awe over totem animals and spirit animals and power animals, that they're such incredible soulful beings, well, so are the ones that are here on the physical plane. So are they. Some of our totem ancestors, we've had relationship from generations ago. Maybe a horse from when we were a Knight Templar, right? Or a falcon when we were a medieval falconer. Or a hunting dog from when we were a French voyageur. Or a painted pony from when we were a warrior. From a long time ago. Yes, they are spiritual and they are magnificent and they are teachers and they are guides, but so too are the ones that we have in our own corrals and in the forest and in the parks and in the zoos. Could go on and on. Kimberly is saying, I agree. When we accept their sweet soul, we become stewards of their own individual soul. They are with me until the end and beyond. Right on, Kimberly. That's how I am with it as well. And if it's just not going to work out and you can't be in that place of grace, it is beneficial to allow someone else. Right? just making sure that you know the someone else that's going to have them so that they don't end up in trafficking. Just like rehomed children in the United States end up trafficked, yes, that is a truth, so too do domestic animals end up being trafficked. So if you are going to rehome, make sure you know whose home it's going to. Kelly is saying, and that sweet kitten who was just tossed from a vehicle on Cheryl's driveway. Oh, goodness. I'm so thrilled for this campaign. The joy welled up in her eyes when we let her know we were going to work to help her. The relief was incredible. Yes, it was. Yes, she is one of those drop spots for people that don't want the black kitten. They don't want the dog, right? They figure that, well, everybody knows that Cheryl runs a sanctuary, so we'll just drop it off. And at her age and at this time of their life, with all of the challenges that come with aging, they are in need. If you donate to Gathering Thunder Foundation, you can leave a note. Please earmark this for the sanctuary. And we will do exactly that. We will do exactly that. Our sacred relationship with animals, I believe, as you've all said, is something that is soul to soul. I believe that they come into our lives for a reason. I believe for us to become better human beings. For us to become better human beings. To challenge ourselves as we sometimes challenge them. I remember Bo getting out into the show arena, right, with his mane all knotted up, looking just dapper and gorgeous and handsome with Elise on his back. And there they were, those two, out in the show arena. Or her with Lectus, and Lectus all polished up and spit shined and looking fabulous. Looking all Western, like Calamity Jane, those two together. Oh, beauty. And then relaxed, playing in the arena together, still to this day. Bo and Elise, not Tussie, right? Next to Bud. Bud, there at the sanctuary, is a 44-year-old Mustang. Also a retired show horse. Actually, he was a barrel racer. Ooh, that's something to watch, those barrel racing horses. Astonishing. Yeah. And he's kind of, still really handsome in his old toothless way. Little sweetheart reminds us that one day we might be toothless and we might need to have our apples mashed up rather than in chunks, right? That's what I think of when I look at Bud and I rub his old head and I think, one of these days this could be me. So you better make those apple pieces extra small for Bud. And when Gabriel has an accident on the floor now because he's going to be 17, I always say to Todd, that could be me one day. I could just be walking along here in this house and whoops, I didn't even know that happened. You're still going to love me, right, honey? Yep. Oh, sacred is sacred. As we say, it comes with the ring. With that, everybody, up next is Terry Ruel with Dear Miss T, and today she's taking on the subject matter of gaslighting. Ought to be a good one. With that, everybody, have a beautiful morning. Please do come back. It's going to be a terrific show with Terry. Blessings be.